Hello and welcome to another weekly update. Now, last week I spoke quite a lot about app templates, and I've spoken about them throughout this week with some blog posts. The blog posts I talked about last week and the videos and stuff as well. So if you haven't seen any of that stuff about app templates, go and watch that, and go and sort of go through the blog posts, watch the videos, because they're really interesting, I think, and they're not just for developers as well. There's plenty that either IT pros or just Teams enthusiasts can take out of the templates as well. So definitely kind of worth looking at. The reason I'm bringing them up again this week is that in that time there's been a new blog post which is really interesting. So the blog post is by Nidhi Chandila. She's a PM. She's a PM within the Teams platform adoption kind of team, and the reason I found this was really interesting, it's all about the Icebreaker Bot, which I talked about and covered last week, but it's kind of all about almost the history of where the Icebreaker Bot came from, which is in itself a history of where Teams has come from. It's a real kind of interesting story, and it's real kind of, I found it really interesting as somebody who's kind of very into Teams and uses Teams every day and thinks it's changing how people work. It was really interesting to get some of this kind of behind the curtain history of the evolution of Teams, and alongside that the Icebreaker Bot, which has been around in kind of various different forms for quite a long time. So I thought that was really interesting. So if you use the Icebreaker Bot, you'll find the history even more interesting. If you don't, go and read the history anyway, and it might kind of spur you into trying out the Icebreaker Bot in your organisation as well. So that's kind of worth looking at, I think, this week. If you only want to read one blog post this week, go and read that one, because I think it's really good. Other things, I briefly spoke about this last week, but there's a proper blog post about it now, and that is Evolve Conference on Tour. That is coming up soon, July 10th. It's a 2-day conference. It's free. It's in London. It's at the Reactor. I'm going to be speaking on day 2. And it's a really good community focused event. It happens every year, normally towards the back end of the year, around the Ignite time frame, and it normally happens in Birmingham. This kind of on tour, is happening in London, and I'm going to be talking about building your first Teams application, and specifically aimed at people who are necessarily not developers. So IT pros, kind of service owners, support desk people, anybody who has a passing interest in Teams and would like to kind of expand that further by digging into the world of Teams apps, but think maybe it's not for them, or they can't, it's too crazy, it's too complicated, or if they're worried about getting started or anything like that, come along, because there's a bunch of things you can do that don't require you to be a developer. So let's dig into those. Let's explore them together, and let's give you something that you can go and take back to your organisation and sort of start building applications on Teams today. That'd be pretty cool. All right. What else? So some new stuff for Graph developers. So there is a new Graph training package. So this is updated for June 2019. It's a Microsoft Graph developer training package. So it's a set of resources put together to help developers upskill quickly on Microsoft Graph. The interesting thing about that is that you can use it yourself for kind of self-learning, almost like a kind of free Pluralsight course for Microsoft Graph, or you can take it and you can redistribute it and redeliver it to people in your organisation, or whatever it is you need it to do. The nice thing about it is that all the materials are all provided together, and they're all you don't need to go and ask anyone for permission to use them. They're all together. You don't need to tell anyone you're using them. There's a bunch of recorded videos, there's a bunch of presentation slide decks you can use, there's a bunch of hands-on modules you have access to, like sort of lab modules, and then there's demo materials as well. So it's a really nice kind of package that pulls together everything you might need to get going with Microsoft Graph. So if you've been on the fence about whether or not to dig into Graph, or you're just starting a project where you're going to need Graph and you're not really sure where to start with it, you're not really sure what the best practices are. I mean, it's an API, but you don't know much more than that. So you don't know, maybe there's an SDK you can use, maybe there's good tooling that can help you get there faster. Maybe you don't actually have to write the HTTP request and response, and you're not really sure. then this is a good training package to kind of dig into and see. There's a bunch of things. It uses mostly the Graph SDK, it's good. It's good. You should dig into it. You should look into it. All right. Finally, I'm going to leave you with one more thing, which is kind of nothing to do with Teams, nothing to do with development, but it's kind of cool and it's a bit geeky. So I thought it would be interesting to leave you with, and that is concerning Windows Terminal. So it's been announced for a little while, but it's been quite hard to get a hold of. So it's been on GitHub for quite a long time, but you've had to sort of download it, build it yourself, and that's that's been a barrier for some people. There is now a super early release build, so it is not ready by any stretch of the imagination. A super early release build is now in the Microsoft Store, and that means that it's been nicely packaged up for you, which makes it much easier to download and kind of kick the tires and try with. So if you've been wondering what this whole Windows Terminal thing is about, the kind of replacement or the new command line, it's got a bunch of interesting new features. It's got some exciting new features like being able to set backgrounds and transparency and stuff, so you can kind of make your command line look like all those Linux command line people. It's just kind of cool. So if you want to do something this weekend, download the Windows Terminal from the Microsoft Store and give it a trial run and see what you think. All right, that's everything from me. Have a super week. Look out for more videos coming this week to YouTube. I've got some I need to do over the weekend and sort of excited about, and some more stuff kind of going on Twitter as well. And have a good weekend, and I will speak to you again next week.